After surviving a car crash, I spent weeks in recovery. My sister promised to watch my kids while I healed. Instead, she told them, "Your mom's just taking a break. She doesn't want to see you right now." When I finally got home, my daughter wouldn't look at me. My son asked, "Are you still our mom?" I confronted my sister, and she said, "Well, someone had to be there for them. You weren't." The next day, I found out she tried filing for custody behind my back. I don't even know where to start, but here it goes. Last October, I was driving home late at night after picking up groceries from a Walmart in Oklahoma City. It had been a long day, and I just wanted to get home to my kids. It was raining, roads were slick, and before I knew it, a truck blew through a red light and slammed into the driver's side of my car. They said I was lucky to be alive. I don't remember much from the crash, just a loud bang, a flash of pain, and then nothing. I woke up in the ICU 2 days later, hooked up to all kinds of machines. Broken ribs, a shattered leg, punctured lung, concussion. The works. The doctors told me I'd need at least 6 to 8 weeks of recovery before I could even think about going home. My first thought wasn't even about the pain or the bills or the mess. It was my kids, Ellie, 7, and Mason, 5. I'm a single mom. Their dad's been out of the picture for years. I didn't have many options, but my sister, Hannah, promised she'd watch them. She told me not to worry. She said she'd stay at my house, keep them in school, keep things as normal as possible. At first, I was relieved. Hannah's only a few years younger than me, and while we hadn't always seen eye to eye growing up, I thought she'd step up. Family takes care of family, right? While I was stuck in a hospital bed, doped up on pain meds and battling through therapy sessions, I called and texted whenever I could. Sometimes Hannah answered. Sometimes she didn't. When she did, it was quick. "Kids are fine. Focus on getting better." I asked if I could talk to Ellie and Mason, and she always had an excuse. "They're asleep, they're at school, they're out with friends." I told myself not to overthink it. I had no choice but to trust her. 6 weeks dragged by. I learned how to walk again with crutches. I learned how to breathe without feeling like my chest was going to split open. All I wanted was to go home, to hold my babies. When the day finally came, I called Hannah and told her I'd be discharged the next morning. She hesitated for a second, then said she had errands and wouldn't be there to pick me up. Fine. I took a taxi, dragging my busted body and a suitcase up my front steps. The house was clean. Too clean. It smelled like bleach and air freshener, not like kids. No toys scattered around, no shoes by the door, no backpacks. I found them in their rooms. Ellie was sitting cross-legged on her bed, staring at nothing. Mason was building something with Legos, but stopped when he saw me. I smiled and opened my arms, expecting them to run to me. They didn't. Ellie wouldn't even look at me. Mason stood up, walked over, and asked, "Are you still our mom?" I swear my heart cracked open right there. I dropped to my knees, ignoring the pain shooting through my leg, and pulled them both close. They were stiff, confused. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I asked them what was going on. Ellie whispered, "Aunt Hannah said you didn't want to see us. She said you needed a break from us." I couldn't even process that at first. I thought maybe they misunderstood. Maybe they took something out of context. I made them grilled cheese sandwiches, sat them in front of a cartoon, and tried not to cry in the kitchen. Later that night, after they fell asleep clinging to me like they were afraid I'd disappear, I called Hannah. She didn't even try to deny it. She said, "Well, someone had to be there for them. You weren't." I lost it. I screamed so loud my ribs hurt. How could she say that? I almost died. I was fighting every day to get back to them. She kept talking, saying the kids needed stability, saying I was being selfish thinking I could jump back and like nothing happened. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. The next morning, things got worse. Way worse. A letter came in the mail. Legal papers. Hannah had filed for emergency custody. Weeks ago. behind my back. She told the court I had abandoned my children, that I was incapacitated and unfit. She painted me like some junkie who couldn't get off the couch. She used my hospital stay against me. I didn't even know it was happening because the papers were served at my house, where she had been living, and she never told me. I sat at the kitchen table, holding the papers with shaking hands. I called the number listed for the court and confirmed it was real. The hearing was set for the following week. I called Hannah again. This time, she didn't pick up. I knew then this wasn't some misunderstanding. She hadn't been doing me a favor. She had been setting me up to take my kids away. It felt like a knife in my back. The next few days were a blur of panic, phone calls, and lawyer meetings. I maxed out my credit cards, hiring someone good, someone who could fight back fast. I got affidavits from my doctors confirming I was recovering but fully capable of parenting. I gathered every text, every voicemail, every shred of evidence that showed I never abandoned my children. That my absence was survival, not neglect. Meanwhile, I tried to hold it together for Ellie and Mason. They were skittish, unsure, scared. Every night, I'd read to them, cuddle them, remind them that I loved them, that I'd never leave them again. The court day came faster than I was ready for. I sat in the stiff courtroom chair, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the proceedings. Hannah walked in wearing a neat little suit, acting calm, collected, like she was doing the noble thing. I stared at her and didn't even recognize the person I'd called my sister. When it was my turn to speak, I told the judge everything. I cried. I shook. I didn't care. I told him about the accident, about the hospital, about trusting my sister and coming home to children who thought I had thrown them away. My lawyer showed the judge the dates, the messages, the lies. He showed that I was never notified about the custody filing, that Hannah had manipulated the whole situation. When the judge ruled in my favor, I almost collapsed. My babies were safe. But the damage, it's still there. Ellie sometimes asks if I'm going to go away again. Mason clings to me in public like he's afraid I'll vanish. I'm in therapy. They're in therapy. We're healing, but it's slow. I haven't spoken to Hannah since. She tried texting once, saying she meant well and that I overreacted. I blocked her. Family is supposed to lift you up when you fall, not stomp on you and steal what matters most. Sometimes the real enemies are the ones closest to you. For a little while, things were quiet. Too quiet. After the court hearing, I tried to rebuild what little normal we had left. Ellie started sleeping through the night again, and Mason would run into my arms when I picked him up from kindergarten. I thought maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind us. Then weird things started happening. The first thing was a CPS visit. A woman knocked on my door on a Tuesday afternoon, said she was from Child Protective Services and that they'd received an anonymous tip about unsafe conditions in my home. She looked around, asked to see where the kids slept, checked the fridge, asked if I had weapons in the house. I stood there, heart racing, forcing a smile while showing her everything. Clean rooms, plenty of food, no weapons except a locked-away baseball bat from when I used to coach Mason's little league. She left after an hour, saying everything looked fine. But I knew exactly who had made that call. I tried to let it go. I told myself Hannah was just angry and would get bored eventually. But the next week it happened again. This time, CPS came with a police officer. Another anonymous tip. This time, they were investigating claims of drug use. I wanted to scream. I had nothing to hide but the humiliation of it. The way the neighbors stared, the way Ellie clutched my hand, the way Mason cried when the officer asked him if he felt safe, it shredded me. I called my lawyer, furious. He said it's hard to stop anonymous tips, that unless she slipped up and left proof, there wasn't much we could do. The worst part? Every time CPS came, it got harder to convince Ellie and Mason that everything was okay. They started whispering to each other when I wasn't looking. They started asking if someone was coming to take them away. Every night, I double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, not because I was scared of strangers, but because I was scared of my own sister. Then came the final straw. One afternoon, I got a call from Ellie's school. The secretary sounded uneasy. She said a woman claiming to be Aunt Hannah had shown up asking to pick up Ellie early. Said there was a family emergency. Thank God the school knew not to release her without my permission. I had listed Hannah specifically as not authorized. But the thought of how close she got, it made me sick. I drove to that school faster than I thought my battered car could go. I hugged Ellie so hard she squeaked. Mason too. I promised them right there in the school parking lot that no one was going to take them from me. After that, I knew I had to do something bigger. I went back to my lawyer and asked what my options were. We filed for a protective order against Hannah. We filed paperwork to make sure her access to the kids was legally, officially cut off. If she came near them again, it wouldn't just be a slap on the wrist. It would be jail time. Hannah, of course, didn't take it well. She showed up at my house one night, pounding on the door, screaming that I was poisoning the kids against her. That I was ungrateful. That she was the only one who cared enough to step up when I abandoned them. I didn't open the door. I didn't even go near it. I just called the cops and waited, heart hammering, while Ellie and Mason hid in their room. The police came and dragged her away, kicking and screaming. She called me every name in the book as they cuffed her. That was the last time I saw her in person. But it wasn't the last time she tried to mess with us. About a week later, weird letters started showing up in my mailbox. No return address. Sloppy handwriting. Inside, they were filled with Bible quotes, threats about judgment, and twisted versions of what happened. One of them even said that God will take back what was stolen. It was insane. I kept every letter, gave them to the police, but unless she was caught in the act, there wasn't much they could do. The hardest part was explaining it all to my kids in a way that didn't terrify them. How do you tell a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old that someone who's supposed to love them is dangerous? Every night, Ellie double-checks the locks now. Every night, Mason sleeps with a flashlight clutched in his little fist. Every morning, I tell them it's going to be okay even when I'm not sure myself. But one thing I know for sure, I'm not giving up. She can stalk. She can threaten. She can lie. But she will never break this family again. Life started feeling like walking through a minefield. Even when things seemed quiet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just out of sight. Some nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for sounds that weren't there. Other nights, I sat by the front window, clutching my phone, half expecting Hannah to pull up in some busted old car and try to snatch my kids. Weeks passed. The letters stopped. No more CPS calls. No more attempts at the school. For a while, it seemed like she finally gave up. Maybe she realized I wasn't going to roll over and let her take my family. But I was wrong. One Friday afternoon, I was cleaning out the hall closet when I found a folder stuffed behind some boxes. I didn't recognize it. When I pulled it out and opened it, my stomach dropped. Inside were copies of my medical records. Not just from the car crash, from years ago. Old ER visits, therapy notes from when I was dealing with postpartum depression after Mason was born, even prescriptions for anti-anxiety meds I'd taken briefly. Some of it was private stuff I barely even remembered. At first, I thought maybe the hospital had mailed it by mistake. But the more I looked, the more I realized this was no accident. Someone had collected this. Buried in the folder was a handwritten note in Hannah's sloppy scrawl, "Proof you're unfit. Just in case." I felt like I was going to throw up. It wasn't just that she lied in court. She had been planning this for years, gathering little scraps of anything she could twist and use against me. I sat on the floor, staring at the papers, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I realized then this wasn't just about anger or jealousy. This was something deeper, sicker. I called my lawyer immediately. He was stunned but not surprised. He said we could now push for criminal charges. Stalking, harassment, invasion of privacy. But before we could even move forward, something else dropped into my lap like a bomb. A neighbor, old Mr. Delgado, who lived across the street, came over one evening while I was watering the flowers. He looked uneasy. He said he wasn't sure if he should get involved, but he thought I should know. Apparently, during the time Hannah was living in my house while I was recovering, she was telling people around the neighborhood that I had run off, that I was a danger to the kids, and that she was stepping in for their safety. She didn't just lie to my kids. She lied to everyone. And not just that, Mr. Delgado said he once saw a man staying over at my house while I was still in the hospital. Some guy he'd never seen before. Said he saw him going in and out late at night, driving my car. My heart froze. I rushed inside and checked the old dashcam footage from my car. It records even when the car is parked, a cheap security system I'd installed a year ago after someone stole packages off my porch. Sure enough, buried in the old files, there it was, footage of a guy, maybe mid-30s, driving my car while I was still lying in a hospital bed fighting for my life. The timestamps didn't lie. And guess who was sitting in the passenger seat? Hannah. I sat there, watching the footage on a loop, feeling like my whole body had gone numb. This wasn't about custody. This wasn't about helping the kids. Hannah had been living in my house, using my car, parading around my neighborhood as if she owned everything, while telling everyone I was some kind of deadbeat mom. It clicked then, all at once. She wasn't trying to save my kids. She wanted my life, my house, my car, my kids. Everything I had built from scratch while she bounced from job to job, boyfriend to boyfriend, apartment to apartment. She didn't just want to help. She wanted to replace me. I turned the footage and the neighbor's statement over to the police. My lawyer fast-tracked the harassment case. They opened an investigation not just into her, but the guy she had staying over. Turns out he had a record for fraud and theft. It was worse than I thought. They had been planning to sell my car. Planning to move into my house officially once she got custody of the kids locked down. The betrayal was so deep it made my head spin. How could someone I shared a childhood with turn into this? I wanted to think it was over. I wanted to think filing charges would finally drive a stake through this nightmare. But deep down, I knew Hannah. She wasn't the type to go down without a fight. And somewhere in the pit of my stomach, I knew the next move she made would be even uglier. After everything came to light, the car footage, the neighbor's testimony, the medical file folder, the police moved fast. They issued a warrant for Hannah's arrest. The guy she was seeing, the one who had been driving my car, was picked up too. Turns out he had a few other warrants out for theft and fraud across 2 states. Hannah got charged with identity theft, attempted grand theft auto, stalking, and endangering the welfare of a child. Seeing her mugshot online was like looking at a stranger. Hair a mess, eyes wild, the same mouth that once whispered bedtime stories next to me as kids, now twisted into something mean and desperate. But even after her arrest, I didn't feel peace. Not yet. I still had to deal with the wreckage she left behind. CPS kept my file open for months because of all the anonymous calls she made. I was flagged, which meant random surprise visits. My neighbors still whispered. Some of them still believed the lies she had told, that I was a bad mom, that I had abandoned my kids, that I only came back to steal them from their real caregiver. There were days when I wanted to move. Pack up everything. Start over somewhere far away where no one knew me. But that would have meant Hannah won. Even behind bars, she would have stolen my peace. I decided to stay. One evening, about 3 months after Hannah's arrest, I got a letter. Real mail this time, not anonymous, not threatening. It was from Hannah herself. From jail. She apologized, but it wasn't really an apology. It was pages and pages of how I did this to her. How she only wanted a better life, and how I owed her because she had sacrificed so much when we were younger. At the end of the letter, she wrote, You think you won. But you'll always know you weren't enough for them without me. I stared at that line for a long time. She didn't regret anything. She didn't feel sorry for what she did to Ellie and Mason. She wasn't even sorry for trying to destroy my life. She was just sorry she got caught. That's when something inside me snapped. Up until then, I had been playing defense, trying to stay clean, trying to be the bigger person. But I realized sometimes you don't win by staying quiet. You win by making damn sure the truth crushes the lies so hard they can never crawl back out. I called my lawyer. I told him I wanted to sue her. Full civil lawsuit for damages, for emotional distress, for the stolen property, for everything. He was hesitant at first. Said I probably wouldn't get much money. Said it could get messy. I didn't care about the money. I wanted it on record. I wanted it burned into every file, every background check, every place she ever tried to start over. I wanted the world to know what she did. We filed the lawsuit. I showed up to every hearing. She showed up in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of her, scowling like a teenager caught shoplifting. I told the judge everything. The manipulation, the lies, the fear she poured into my kids' lives. The way she almost stole everything I loved because she thought she deserved it. She barely said a word in her defense. The judge ruled in my favor. A $250,000 judgment. She'll never be able to pay it. Not in this lifetime. She'll be paying me pennies for the rest of her miserable life. Her wages garnished, her tax returns snatched, her credit wrecked. It wasn't about the money. It was about the record. A permanent, public, undeniable truth. She tried to steal my life and failed. After the final court date, I drove home, picked up Ellie and Mason from school, and took them out for ice cream. We sat there under the cheap fluorescent lights of the Dairy Queen, sticky and smiling, chocolate on their faces, Mason telling some ridiculous story about a farting dragon he made up at school. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed. Really laughed. I made mistakes too. I trusted someone just because she was family. I didn't push hard enough when the phone call stopped. I believed that blood meant loyalty. It doesn't. It never did. But I survived. I rebuilt. And I learned that sometimes the people who betray you aren't monsters hiding in the dark. They're the ones you grew up with. The ones who know exactly where to hit you hardest. But they also forget something. The people who survive real storms don't break easy. I'm not broken. I'm still standing. And every time Hannah gets her paycheck garnished for $12.36 to pay me back for the life she tried to steal, I'll smile a little bit wider. Because no matter what lies she told, no matter what damage she caused, in the end, she didn't take my kids. She didn't take my life. She just lost hers. All by herself.